What are your earliest recollections of growing up in New Jersey?
Well, I remember growing up in the suburbs of Newark. I was born in Newark, and we lived there for a while, but then we moved to Maplewood, New Jersey. And I guess my experience was similar to millions of other kids all over the country, just hanging out until something hit you and grabbed you. And really rock and roll did that to me early on. You know, I can vividly remember watching Elvis on Ed Sullivan's Sunday night show and seeing DJ Fontana, his drummer, play the opening roll to Hound Dog, and that just grabbed me and moved me physically, and right after that I wanted to be a drummer.
What was your favorite kind of music growing up?
Rock and roll, without a doubt. Simple, basic, powerful rock and roll. Kenny, why don't you squat down?
At what age did you first get involved in playing in bands?
Well, I started my first band in the 4th grade. Like many school systems in New Jersey and probably throughout the country, we had a little band in 4th grade, and I took a couple of guys from that band, and we started a Dixieland combo. And this was 58 or 59, and we played basically Dixieland music. It was trumpet and clarinet and me playing drums. That was my first band. And then when the Ventures, who were a largely successful instrumental group in the early 60s, became popular in this area, they were from the West Coast, I got rid of the trumpet and the clarinet and got a couple of guitars, so I was on my way to becoming a rocker, and had a rock band before actually the Beatles became world famous and popular. So I was already playing rock and roll when the Beatles happened, and then as soon as that happened, I wanted to be Ringo Starr.
Did you play a lot of high school dances and things like that?
Played everything. Everything. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, cruise ships when I was older. Sure, played high school dances. CYO dances were especially popular back then. It's a shame because I don't think there's an area like that for kids today. You know, just the concept of the Hullabaloo Club in the mid-60s, teen clubs. In this town, in Middletown, New Jersey, there was a Hullabaloo Club, and they didn't serve alcohol, and kids could go there and listen to bands like, well, like Bruce's first band. So it was a very exciting time to be growing up and playing in a rock and roll band.
Did you play the bar circuit in any of the bands you were in?
Oh yeah, you always played the bar circuit. I remember my father got me an ABC card, which was a cabaret license to play. In the 60s, you had to be 18 to play in bars. I was 14 and I got this card so I could play places where they served liquor. Yeah, it was very important. You know, I wouldn't trade that education for anything. Having to play 5, 6 sets a night to people who don't really care that you're there all the time. It was just an experience I couldn't trade for anything. And I think everybody in every band that I've ever talked to has the memory and the physical feeling of having to take a Hammond B3 organ and place it over the bar. And you had to get everybody in the band to pick the thing up. So memories like that, they're in you, you know, and they come out in your music.
Did you play the shore area at all during those times, the early days?
Well, growing up in North Jersey, I played mainly North Jersey, occasionally in New York City. There was a great rock club in Orange, New Jersey called Dodds. I don't even know if it's still there, but I played there a lot. I got as far south as occasionally Asbury Park, but the Route 35, Sayreville, Perth Amboy area. You know, the clubs like the Mustang Lounge, the Chatterbox was in Seaside Heights. I played there a few times. But the Mustang Lounge, I think there was a place called the Thunderbird that was on Route 35. And I I can remember playing Mustang Sally in the Mustang Lounge in 1967. It was a thrill.
Did you ever play Battle of the Bands? Do you remember those?
Always played that. It was one of the greatest places to play. As a matter of fact, the band that I had when I was in junior high school, called the Epsilons, won the North Jersey Rock and Roll Championships at South Mountain Arena, 1965. It was a custom car show there, and over the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they had a band battle. And I can remember being tremendously intimidated by older bands coming in with these beautiful Fender dual Showman amplifiers, and we had our little, makeshift kind of amplifiers. We were much younger, but I guess our enthusiasm and our wildness got us through, and we won this trophy. So that was very exciting. That was in 1965. I remember I was in 9th grade.
Can you just explain a little bit the concept of the Battle of the Bands?
Well, a Battle of the Bands was what it sounds like. You'd have 5 or 6, maybe a dozen bands in competition, and they're based on presentation, originality, volume probably, and the winner would get a trophy or a cash prize, or occasionally a music store would sponsor it and you'd get $50 worth of some kind of equipment. But it was a great training ground because the competition factor really brought out the best in bands. You really wanted to win that. It was very important. It was, to a 14-year-old drummer from North Jersey, it was the most important thing that had ever happened.
Shortly after that, you had a band that actually got a recording contract and made an album. You want to talk a little bit about that band and that experience?
When I was 19, I was in a group called Blackstone, and we signed with Epic Records to do an album. It took us 2 days to record the album. You might say it was a low-budget deal. The record was released in 1970. It was called Blackstone. It was really my first taste of being in a professional recording situation. And if I ever found the producers who produced that, I'm going to ask them whatever happened to the advance that we got. But it was a great experience recording an album. Hey, here's my album. I think it sold about 12 copies in Essex County. I bought 10.
Living so close to New York, you had a bit of an advantage by being so close to the city, and you took good advantage of that by going to the city and learning your craft of playing drums from one of the greats.
I studied with Bernard Purdie in New York City. It was tremendously advantageous living in North Jersey at the time. It was easy to pop in there and absorb the thing that was happening in music in New York City in the 1970s, which was the session thing. Session players were tremendously in demand. Bernard Purdie, who was one of the great soul drummers, he will tell you the greatest soul drummer of the 60s and early 70s. He played with Aretha, and his greatest stuff was with King Curtis and Aretha Franklin. He started to give drum lessons, and I found this out, and I just headed on in to study with him, and he was really helpful getting my attitude together, teaching me the concept of work. He made you really work. But it was great, I can remember telling people when they asked, "Where are you from?" I'd say, "New Jersey, not New York." I always thought New Jersey because New Jersey had a great music scene. There were bars all over the place. There was, of course, New York to go in and see, big acts. Fillmore East was, if you'd never experienced Fillmore East, it's impossible to tell you what that was like. But even the college circuit in those days, a school like Seton Hall University in South Orange would have a concert every weekend. Big name acts. Everybody played there. You could see on a bill, you could see Cream, you could see The Who, you could see Hendrix at the same concert. So it was very exciting to grow up in this part of the country in the 60s.
A lot of the clubs demanded that you play top 40 material. Did you find that in North Jersey to be true?
Oh yeah, yeah. You always had to play cover material, which I always loved because there was so much great material to play. You could really put your own personality into it. Um, I always liked playing cover songs. I still do. In the East Street Band, we still play a lot of cover material, and you try to just put yourself into it and make it come off the best you can. But I think that was more prevalent in North Jersey than South Jersey. Maybe again the direct influence from New York. You know, it was a little slicker, it was a little more polished.
How did you get together with Bruce?
Oh, we got together fine. Well, actually, the story is he put an ad in the Village Voice looking for a drummer and a piano player. I'd been doing a lot of work in New York City. I was playing in Godspell, the show, and I was going to college, Seton Hall, as a matter of fact, at the same time. But I saw this ad, went down. It was very simple. It was very little talking. If I remember it, Bruce just counted to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we went into a shuffle tune. I think it was a Fats Domino song. And it just felt right. It felt so good. This was about 6 months after the Wild and the Innocent album was released. And it changed my life. Changed my life. I just remember feeling like I'd found my spot. You know, after years and years of searching of what am I going to do, who am I, where am I going to fit in to play the kind of drums and the kind of music I want. Sitting down and playing with Bruce and the East Street Band that first time, it was August of '74, was the most transforming experience in my life.
Were you aware of him from playing the circuit before that?
Not really. I was, like I said, I was playing in Godspell, and I was more into a New York session kind of player mentality because I wasn't in a band. So the only thing to do really in the early '70s was freelance. My younger sister was a big Bruce fan from Asbury Park days. And I remember after playing with Bruce the first time, what attracted me was his ad, because he said he had a recording contract with Columbia Records. Immediately I knew he was doing better than I was. But I remember playing with him and calling my sister later that night, and I said, "Abby, you remember that guy Bruce you were telling me about?" My sister Abby, she said, yeah, Bruce Springsteen. I said, well, I think I might be in his band. And she went crazy, you know. And then about a week later, Bruce called me and said, come on down, let's play.
One thing that I think helped a lot of musicians from New Jersey was the fact that here in Jersey we had such a wide variety of influences. We had R&B influence, soul influence, rock and roll influence. Has any of that music, did any of that music influence you? And if so, who were the players that you looked to?
Oh, I was influenced by everything that was happening in the '60s. So much was happening, and you just couldn't help but take it in. Some of my particular favorites were, of course, the Beatles and the Stones, and that whole British invasion really showed me the possibilities of what I could do as a young drummer. In the immediate area, Dino Danelli with the Rascals was a very inspirational and personal hero for me. You know, he was a great drummer. He was from New Jersey, which really helped, you know, because I say, hey, guy from New Jersey made it, you know. He was a great drummer. There were a lot of great bands. There were a lot of great unsung bands, you know. I remember some of the heavy bar bands that I used to go see. Salvation in the '60s was a big New Jersey bar band, and they were great. The Rich Kids, who were from Long Island but played in New Jersey a lot. This area had a lot of great talent. I love the Stax sound. You know, I mean, I can reel off my favorite drummers: Al Jackson with Stax, Benny Benjamin from Motown, Roger Hawkins, who played with the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, still does. The music was somehow, it was so, you know, it was really the golden age of rock and roll, like the 50s and 60s were, like I guess the 30s and 40s were for movies. And once, you know, you're past that golden age, something happens where the business takes over, or it just becomes so widespread that it loses some of that, boy, this is really happening new every day, you know. I mean, to have the amount of talent in one era. Hendrix, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, you know, right there. That's incredible. And then you have, you know, James Brown and the Supremes and all the Motown acts, Temptations. I mean, it was very exciting. So I took it all in, you know, and I think that it surfaces all of that in the way I drum.
You being from North Jersey, once you got into the East Street Band, which primarily was musicians from South Jersey, you sort of represent the person who bridged that gap between the two parts of the state. Did you find any, you know, difference between in attitudes or anything, you know, in the playing of the people from South Jersey and North Jersey, or was it the same kind of?
Well, you know, to to someone living in Camden, we're all North Jerseyites, you know. Yeah, it did. There was definitely, you know, that difference of, like we said before, North Jersey was slicker. It was cover tunes as opposed to people writing their own music. The scene down here, for example, the Upstage, which I never went to, but that type of scene wouldn't have happened in North Jersey. People were too interested in either working in the, you know, the cabaret scene, which turned into the club scene. So the cabaret scene was where you had to have an act. I mean, it had to be presented in more of a slick, you know, attitude. That was much different down here. It was looser. It was more improvisational. It was a real area to grow. It was a pocket of something down here that North Jersey was much more exposed. I felt that as soon as I moved down. You know, just the, you know, the topographical and geographical differences of, you know, above the Raritan Bridge and below the Raritan Bridge. It's a big difference, and it worked its way into the music.
You have now played all over the world many times. How, if any way, do you feel that audiences in New Jersey differ from audiences in other parts, you know, in the rest of the world?
Well, I can say that the night we opened the Meadowlands in 1981 was, out of 11 years of playing with Bruce and the East Street Band, one of the most exciting moments of my life. And the New Jersey crowd was a big part of that. Probably the biggest part, because, you know, the old saying, there's no place like home. When you come home to play, especially when you came up the way we did from, you know, a corner bar in Asbury Park, basically, to an arena or a stadium for your hometown crowd. You can't replace that feeling, and you can't find it anywhere else. When you walk on the stage at Giant Stadium last summer, you felt like you were home. You felt like, hey, these are my people, you know. And I remember driving from South Orange, where I grew up, to Giant Stadium opening night, and passing a lot of the bars that I played in Passaic and Garfield, the Choo Choo Club in Garfield, you know, going to the Capitol Theater as a kid and just experiencing all that music that happened there in North Jersey. You know, when you talk about music in North Jersey, the center of it in the 70s was the Capitol Theater. I mean, every weekend, great acts, national acts, international acts. So going to Giant Stadium, passing all these places and all the memories that I have, you know, you take that with you when you go up on the stage and you say, yeah, you know, you just want to do the best possible job you can. I mean, you always want to do that, but something about playing in New Jersey, you know, and I thought it was particularly fitting that when we did our first East Coast Stadium show in the metropolitan area, that it was in New Jersey.
Okay, we've got to do a tape change here.
Okay. At what age did you first get involved in playing in bands?
Well, I started my first band in the 4th grade. Like many school systems in New Jersey and probably throughout the country, we had a little band in 4th grade, and I took a couple of guys from that band, and we started a Dixieland combo. And this was 58 or 59.
What are your earliest recollections of growing up in New
Well, I remember growing up in the suburbs of Newark. I was born in Newark, and we lived there for a while, but then we moved to Maplewood, New Jersey. And I guess my experience was similar to millions of other kids all over the country, just hanging out until something hit you and grabbed you. And really rock and roll did that to me early on. You know, I can vividly remember watching Elvis on Ed Sullivan's Sunday night show and seeing DJ Fontana, his drummer, play the opening roll to Hound Dog, and that just grabbed me and moved me physically, and right after that I wanted to be a drummer.
What was your favorite kind of music growing up?
Rock and roll, without a doubt. Simple, basic, powerful rock and roll. Kenny, why don't you squat down? And then as soon as that happened, I wanted to be Ringo Starr.
Did you play a lot of high school dances and things like that?
Played everything, everything. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, cruise ships when I was older. Sure, played high school dances. CYO dances were especially popular back then. It's a shame because I don't think there's an area like that for kids today. You know, just the concept of the Hullabaloo Club in the mid-'60s. And we played basically Dixieland music. It was trumpet and clarinet and me playing drums. That was my first band. And then when the Ventures, who were a largely successful instrumental group in the early '60s, became popular in this area, they were from the West Coast, I got rid of the trumpet and the clarinet and got a couple of guitars, so I was on my way to becoming a rocker, and had a rock band before actually the Beatles became world famous and popular. So I was already playing rock and roll when the Beatles happened,